Good morning, college and career success. This video is for Tuesday, March 31st. All right, so I'm going to start by recapping what is due today. On Tuesday, March 31st, you have 3 things due today. Many of you have already submitted 1, 2, or all 3 of them until this evening. If you are still working on getting any of those done, technically until 10 o'clock tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and click in the Chapter 5 folder just to remind you what is due. First thing is your Writing Center takeaway. So if you click right in the Writing Center takeaway, there are a couple ways you could do this. Some of you have just been emailing them to me as a Word document and an attachment in email. Some of you have been doing them in Google Docs. Some of you, it doesn't matter, like whatever works for you. But here is right inside, you could write it in a Word document and upload it, or you can write the submission right there. Now remember, a Writing Center takeaway, just like all the other takeaways you did previous to us transitioning to online learning, has the same requirements. It's 2 paragraphs, and you are talking about what you could use from that resource. So I don't need like a summary or what that office does, because I already know. I told you about it, or a speaker told you about it, or it's already offered online somewhere. It's how could you personally benefit from that particular service. So what about the Writing Center, or as we'll talk about today, the digital library, could you use or as a student be benefited from by visiting or utilizing those tools at that office? So that's what you were talking about, not a summary or a restatement of what the resource is. It's how you personally can benefit from it. So that's the first thing, is the Writing Center takeaway. The second thing that you were submitting for tonight, Tuesday, March 31st, is your Chapter 5 quiz. So it's right here, and then you'll see there's an area for a Dropbox. Again, some of you have been doing this via Google Docs, Word attachment, or you've been putting it in a Dropbox, whatever works for you. As a reminder, when you do work on the quiz itself, oops, I have it open somewhere. Make sure you address the entire question. Just make sure that you are looking at, the prompt, and then address all pieces of it. The last thing you are doing is the Chapter 5 non-journal, which is right here. Chapter 5 non-journal. That opened up right away. So this is something, again, I normally would have done with you in class. However, given our circumstances, you're doing this on your own. You're reading the 4 cases, and each of the cases you're answering 3 questions. So you can type your responses like right under each case or down at the bottom. Some of you have been doing just like this, case 1, case 2, case 3, and so on, and answering the questions. So you're reading each case and answering these 3 questions. What was the offense, if any? What should they have done differently? And what should the consequences be? So you're basing your responses off of the kind of academic integrity portion of Chapter 5, as well as, if you need to, here I uploaded our honesty and learning policy, the policy that our college officially follows in cases of potential plagiarism or cheating. So those are the 3 things that are due tonight. If you have not already submitted them, they were used for your Week 10 attendance. Your Writing Center takeaway, your Chapter 5 quiz, and your Chapter 5 non-journal. All right, so for today, I'm going to get into Chapter 6. Here we go. So I'm going to preview the chapter with you, kind of like I normally would if we were sitting together in class. I'm just going to preview it, talk about the certain slides, and then next week's video, I do a lot of activities with the concepts from this chapter. So again, the purpose of today is just to kind of go through, introduce you to the chapter, and then in next week's video, we do like the non-journal, I do several activities. It's really one of my favorite days that I normally have with my college and career success classes in class, so I'm sad that we're missing it, but I'll try to do my best with it with you virtually. All right, so Chapter 6, talking about mapping your plan and academic success. So the first thing is creating an academic plan, and some of you are already doing this and already working on it. If you have not already, this is a good time to start thinking about it. So first of all, knowing who your advisor is, and then maybe even having a mentor here on campus so that you know kind of the person that you can network, who can provide encouragement, who can let you know what's going on. So whether that's your advisor or maybe when you get into your career program classes, maybe it's one of your instructors, and they can just kind of be that source of like, hey, what's going on in the field? They can write resume recommendations for you, whatever it might be. Having that person is really important. Understanding your curriculum requirements. Sometimes people are surprised to know that after they get their 2-year degree, they have a hard time finding a job. They need a 4-year degree. And so knowing that as early as possible is really helpful, so that if you know right now, like, okay, I need my 2-year degree, but I also know eventually I'm going to need my 4-year degree, you can start planning for that now. You can kind of start looking at institutions where you might go to transfer and get that 4-year degree, or figure out kind of what could you do with your 2-year degree and how long can you wait to get your 4-year degree, or in some cases, further. Master's degree, doctorate degree. So knowing what kind of is going to be expected of you in your field is important, which also leads to knowing kind of your degree requirements. How many classes are you going to have to take? All the majors here on campus fall between usually 60 to 67 credits. So how many credits are you going to have to take? How many electives? How many requirements? Are you minoring as well? Are you double majoring? So knowing all of that is also an important part of the planning process. How appropriate online classes. Our Chapter 6 does talk about online classes. Right now, we are living in this asynchronous world. You guys are completing your assignments and activities anytime you're able to, even though I did recommend trying to kind of keep it regular with your Tuesday check-in, so to speak, but you are completing those assignments and activities whenever you can. Not all of you are logged in at the same time. Now, there are classes that are synchronous, meaning everyone's in on the same day, same time, and they're using some kind of, whether it's Collaborate or Zoom or something like that, so that you're seeing each other in person, or you're talking to each other, or the teacher's like taking attendance and you're all there. Also, Chapter 6 talks about experiential learning, maybe some internships, service learning, so you'll learn a little bit more about that as well. The next chunk of Chapter 6 talks about career planning, the power of networking. That phrase, it's not what you know, it's who you know, which I think both are important, but Chapter 6 goes into more detail about this, and we do have like a networking activity that I do next week with a couple different components. So networking is really important, kind of establishing some personal and professional relationships, which can start right here at Stark State. Again, finding that advisor, finding that mentor, someone who can kind of get you connected to the outside world, so to speak, once you get into the field and the people that you talk to and who you have to know. The importance of networking, again, is who you know, but also who knows you and what you know. So we can't dismiss the fact that you still have to know what you're doing and what you're talking about, but what you know is really important. Who you know can help connect you based on what you know. So they go hand in hand, but you can't just know the right people and not know what you're talking about. So that obviously plays an important part. Sometimes that networking, people think of networking as just social media. Well, that's not the original purpose of networking, although now in the 2000s and 2010s and now 2020s, social networking is a big part of just networking in general. You can network in social media. Usually Facebook and Twitter are not always the best ways unless you're already kind of established in your field, and then people start to follow you and you can make connections that way. But LinkedIn is usually kind of the most professional type of social media networking. Regardless of what you use or what you have, you want to make sure that you are presenting yourself in a professional way, because whether your profile is set to private or not, employers can sometimes access that thing, that account and see maybe a mutual friend or a workaround. So I've sat on multiple hiring committees at the college, and we do look at social media. We want to see what kind of pictures, what kind of posts, what kind of comments, what kind of qualifications are being talked about and referenced on there. So just kind of things to keep in mind, especially as you enter the workforce and you're trying to get a job. You want to make sure that there's no inappropriate posts, that you're not using language that's offensive, that you have a pretty professional photo. I had one student who her profile picture was her with a marijuana leaf hat on with smoke coming out of her mouth. and she wanted to be a teacher, that's really not going to do well for you. So you want to make sure that you have a professional photo and an email address. My favorite email address a student has ever shared with me is their email address was poledancer@yahoo.com. Now, this student was a firefighter, but that's not what you think of, maybe, whenever you hear pole dancer. And so we suggested to him, maybe you should come up with maybe a more professional email address, something that has like your initials or your name or a date in there. Create a LinkedIn account, follow people in the field, and share your accomplishments. So those are all kind of ways to create that more professional social media presence. We're also going to talk next week more in depth about crafting an elevator speech. So they will talk about this in chapter 6 more. It's just kind of having this in your back pocket, so to speak. So whenever you go to a job fair or you meet someone and you're trying to kind of get your foot in the door, so to speak, you want to have this 30-second intro to yourself, and you want to talk about who you are, your accomplishments, and what you're aiming to do, and maybe catch their attention while doing so. And so we're going to practice that next week, and I'm going to talk to you more about that. But you'll read about elevator speeches in chapter 6. And then also just making sure that you're expanding your network, ways to do so, join professional organizations. We have talked about this with your final project. There are tons of professional organizations out there that are based around particular fields. For students, sometimes they're discounted rates. So if you wanted to join as a student, it might only be, under $50 to join if you're able to do so. Other times, they may even be free as a student. Other ways, at little less cost, would just be to join in extracurricular activities here at the college. Join a club that has something to do with your major. Go to events that are put on around campus. Volunteer for different organizations. So kind of all those things are ways to not only build your resume, but expand your network. Chapter 6 also talks about job search tips, which we'll circle back to the Career Services site about this as well, so that can kind of remind you of those resources. But, making sure that you have a resume that is catered to the job that you're looking for, that it's kind of customized to the values and skills that your potential employee is searching. And then the chapter kind of winds up with financial planning. So talking about the importance of knowing your options when it comes to paying for your education, scholarships, grants, loans, the difference between those things, making sure that you know what a return of investment is. So a college degree has a pretty high return on investment, meaning that you put money in, but ultimately in the long run, it's going to be an investment. It's going to pay off for you, hopefully because you're going to get a job in your field to kind of make that living salary and more so. Establishing good credit is another thing that we'll talk about, another activity that goes along with chapter 6, making sure that if you have a credit score, ways to build that, or if you don't have one, ways to establish it, making sure that you're budgeting. So kind of like time management we talked about in previous chapters, maybe do a budget analysis, look to see how and what are you spending on and where maybe could you afford to not spend so much somewhere to put towards something else. So looking at your budget and making sure that you are using your funds just like you would your energy or your time in an appropriate way that meets your goals. And then making sure that you are buying based off of logic, not on emotion. So chapter 6 goes into more depth with all of that. So in terms of chapter 6, as I mentioned now a couple of times, that's just the preview. That's something I would normally do with you in class, kind of run through and preview the chapter. So for next week, April 7th, you are reading chapter 6. Please just go into a little bit more depth with it. Take a look at certain sections, maybe in particular if you feel like you struggle with, whatever, an elevator speech or financial decisions. Look at those sections a little bit more. And then you are going to do your chapter 6 journal. So here's the prompt right here. Remember, the prompt's always going to be in red. It is 250 words, double spaced. So if you do it in a Word document, it kind of makes it easier because you can really look at the font and double space it properly. So the prompt is share a personal example, or maybe someone close to you that you know or in the media, about how networking can lead to career opportunities. Again, let me emphasize that does not necessarily mean social networking. I don't need to know about how Facebook connected you with a long-lost childhood friend. That's not an example of networking unless by some wild chance that childhood friend is in your career field and they could get you a job. So make sure you're talking about that professional networking. I've had students in the past say, like I had a photography major, and they put a lot of their stuff on Twitter, and they had people start to follow them, and one of their followers asked them to shoot their wedding. So that kind of thing, that's an example of social networking that ties into your career networking. So keep in mind that although you may not know someone directly, someone in your network may know someone. So basically, come up with an example, or if someone else that you know this has happened to, how networking helps you lead to career opportunities. Again, that concept of it's not always who you know, but it's also, or excuse me, it's not always what you know, it's also who you know. So you'll go in and you'll submit your Chapter 6 journal right in there. And again, that is going to be due April 7th, and that's going to help me for week 11 attendance. The other and last thing I'm going to talk to you about today is the digital library. Initially, we were scheduled to go on a field trip today to the digital library. We would go down there and visit with Sarah, and she would walk us through the digital library. And Sarah is also working on a video for me to plug into the class. So I'm hoping that by the time I upload this video, I will also have Sarah's video, but I'll also walk you through a couple components as well. So from the homepage in the Stark State College homepage, or you can go to My Stark State, and it's in the Academic Support tab. You'll see there's a link to the digital library right there, or at the very bottom of the Stark State homepage, digital library. You could also go to Google and search Stark State Digital Library. All right, so here's the library's homepage. It's going to look a little different than normal because we are all digital now, but it will tell you, okay, here's some information, what's going on around campus. Here's how you can contact a librarian. If you have a research paper coming up, a lot of you are still in comp classes and psychology classes or whatever it might be, where you're doing some research, you can request a student appointment and they can help with you online. These student appointments are for quick little questions. These are usually a little bit more in-depth. They want you to kind of spend some time with them here. You could even send a couple questions, have an interaction with them. Now, the chat over here, Ask a Librarian, this is where you would go for your quick question. Hey, I forget how to get to the databases. What do I do? And they can walk you through that. It is not, hey, I need this article, find it for me. They're not going to retrieve things for you, but they're going to help you understand how to do a process. So that's for a quick question. The chat. Book a student appointment is a little bit more in depth. So they also have, here are their kind of hours typically. And what I would say pay attention to is down here, we're going to go into the database by subject. I'm going to have you go here and I'm going to show just a couple quick things. Find kind of you're not doing research for me, so this is very general. So I'm going to have you just find where you think if you were looking into something for your particular career, what would it fall under? If you're in the business field, obviously business, there's education. If you're not 100% sure, you can go ahead and just click on general information. But I want to show you a couple things in here. Once you're in your database, we do, like in class, in the digital library, we talk about the difference between scholarly or popular. So I'm going to go into where it says in-class exercises, and it's going to ask you about, what is a scholarly article? And I just want you to spend some time kind of going through, looking at the difference between scholarly and popular articles so that you know the difference. Scholarly are those things that are peer-reviewed, research-based, that are found only through databases, and then popular sources are more like your magazines, your newspapers, your websites that are meant more for entertainment and not necessarily research-based. And so it's going to go through and show you all of the kind of different components and features of these two different types of sources. I just want you to spend time doing that. And then it'll talk to you also about if you needed to evaluate websites. How is that process? What does that process look like? It's called the CRAP process, which I know sounds funny, but you can go through and say, okay, if I wanted a website to use for a research project, how do I know if it's a really good website or not? Then there's also the topic of what is credible, and then how do I choose a topic? So I encourage you to kind of click around on those and get to know kind of those things, especially if you struggle with some of those. You're like, oh, I hate choosing topics. What's the best way to do that? Whenever you do go to do research, and again, you're not doing research for me, this is just kind of giving you an overview. There is a database here that whether it's Academic Search Complete, Health Source Complete, Business Source Complete, whatever it might be. When you click into there, we're off campus. It's going to ask you to log in using your username and password for the college. And then you'll get to something called the EBSCO host. And this is where you do a lot of your searching. So if you were searching for like a scholarly article, you would click scholarly, and let's say I want to learn about bullying and middle childhood. I don't know. Now I'm going to search. And I'm going to have 47, a decent amount. And I could sort through and look at my different sources and see what came up. And if I really wanted to see something, I would click in there and I would read the little summary right here. If I really liked it, I think I could use it for whatever my purpose is. The whole article is over here where it says full text. And if I think I really might end up using it, I could print it out, or I could just email it to myself right here and plug in my email address. Again, the reason I'm just showing you this is the really quick overview. I don't expect you to conduct any searches. I'm not going to quiz you on it. I'm just kind of giving this to you as like an overview. And as I mentioned, Sarah is doing a video, so I'm going to plug that in like kind of like right either on top or below the video for today so that you can see her video as well, because she'll go into more detail about all of this. I just wanted to show you that this is a resource you can use. So I encourage you to play around, get on the Digital Library website, look around, watch Sarah's video that I'm going to embed in our course as well. Then you are going to go back to chapter 6, and in here I will have, and I'm just going to go ahead and create it right now, you are going to submit your digital library takeaway. So this is going to be due April 7th as well. So this will help me take week 11 attendance. There we go. So around 10 o'clock. I've been putting 10 o'clock as a deadline because I know some of you, again, are these different schedules, working, you're taking care of people in your life, whatever it might be. So there's a digital library takeaway Dropbox. All right. So again, for next Tuesday, April 7th, you are reading chapter 6. You are completing the chapter 6 journal. You're completing the digital library takeaway. The digital library, where you get the information from, again, is here's the actual digital library page. I'm going to encourage you to click around, look at it, look at the information. If you're comfortable, get into the databases, play around, but definitely look at the video for digital library. I am going to plug it in where it says Tuesday class videos. You will eventually see this video listed, under week 11, and I'll have the digital library video there as well. So watch her video. And then when it comes time for the takeaway, you are not just going to summarize what the digital library is. You're going to tell me how you would use it. Or if you've used it already, how have you used it? What was your experience with it? You can plug that in also to your takeaway. So that's the purpose of that takeaway. Again, it's not to just tell me what the digital library is and summarize all of that information. I already know it. What is meaningful to you? Do you have research that you're going to have to do this semester or potentially in a future semester? How could you use a digital library? What do you struggle with? Do you not know how to research? Do you not know how to evaluate websites? Do you need help with citations? Those are all things that the digital library focuses on. So, okay. So I will recap all of this in my weekly email. Please, by tonight, make sure you are submitting your Writing Center takeaway, your Chapter 5 quiz, and your Chapter 5 non-journal. For next week, April 7th, you are completing your Chapter 6 journal and your digital library takeaway in those assigned Dropboxes. Hope you are all doing well. Talk to you later.